Good evening, everybody. Today evening, I had a talk on how to work with resentment. In Pali, we call resentment to be upana. Okay, so last week I talked about anger, and I was trying to tell you that the English meaning of dosa or koda, which we understand, in English by anger, could not be the most, accurate, translation. And the word anger has nothing to do with this understanding, but koda dosa, they are pretty much, bad mental, physical states of our life, probably body and mind, when it comes to our life. So today I'm gonna talk to you about resentment, because resentment comes after anger. Usually in Pali it says pubbakalang kodo aparakalang upanahu. So usually anger arises if somebody is unable to get rid of anger in the first place, then it will go on to the stage called upana. We call it resentment, enmity, grudge. What is resentment, grudge, or enmity, or which we understand in Pali by upana, is clinging to an intention to cause harm and withhold forgiveness. Now we know an intention to cause harm is vyapada, which we call ill will. But in this case, somebody is going to cling to the thoughts of ill will, which we call upana. At the end, after developing upana, what's going to happen is that that person is going to withhold forgiveness. There will be no forgiveness, because that person is holding a grudge or a resentment. Today I'm gonna tell you a very easy way, one of the very easiest ways to cope up with or work with this resentment, or which you call upana. As you can remember, I talked about a methodology called RAIN. It's an acronym of a methodology that can be used to deal with any type of negative mental states. Now, what does RAIN mean or stand for? R stands for recognize. So you recognize resentment in the first place. And A stands for accept. You're gonna accept that you've been going through this resentment or grudge or enmity, whatever. And then I stands for investigation. So you need to investigate your resentment in multiple ways. For example, you need to investigate your resentment, physically. What happens to you when you are having this resentment? For example, you may have the same bunch of physical changes, like shortness of your breath, your pulses beat faster, heaviness of your body or chest. So you're gonna actually investigate resentment physically. You can investigate your resentment physically in this methodology. And then you can also investigate resentment emotionally, and what kind of emotions that have been happening inside of me at the time of this resentment for something. You can actually investigate then resentment by ways of emotions. Also, you can investigate your resentment for something or some persons cognitively. What kind of a narrative gives rise to this resentment, right? So you can investigate in many ways of the resentment. At the end, we talked about N, which stands for non-identification. That means now at this point you understand having investigated your resentment from different bunch of perspectives or aspects, you're going to separate you from the resentment. That's the hardest part for many. For example, like someone can say, I know I have resentment, I have a grudge about someone, I have a grudge about an event happened to me from somebody. But the thing is, you need to separate you from that event, from that person or the source of resentment. That is called non-identification. So, I mean, once again, if I'm to mention, these, letters and what they mean, R is to recognize, A is to accept, I is to investigate, and N is to non-identify. Actually, this method was actually proposed by the Insight Meditation Center in the States. But anyway, this is the best way to get rid of resentment, any type of resentment in the first place. Apart from this quick methodology to tackle or handle your resentment, we could do some other techniques also. But I mean, you have to use RAIN methodology in the first place. Then you could consider these steps too. One of the methods is to see why some people, or why you try to justify your resentment for someone, right? I think a lot of people, they tend to justify, okay, this person did this to me, did this mean thing to me, so I can't forget about it. I mean, don't try to justify, because this is not good. Because when you have the resentment, I mean, the moment that you got it, what happens to you from that point onwards is that you're having a bunch of emotional, physical, mental, cognitive situations, and that are really not good, and you don't need to you don't need to deserve for all those bad experiences. So you don't need to justify anything. Don't try to make any excuses to justify anything, any person, any event, to feel that this resentment is fair for me to carry on. That's not a good thing. That's one of the techniques to do. Don't justify. And then I think we can get rid of a lot of resentments or grudges or enmities if we can have a good communication with the people who we work with, who we live with. Sometimes we don't actually express our feelings to the best of what we really want to tell them. Sometimes we don't use a precise, clear language to talk about what we want to talk, what we want to tell them actually. So if you can make clear what you really want to express from the bottom of your heart, that will be something really instrumental, helpful to get rid of any resentment in the first place. Like the RAIN methodology. Another technique, I would say this could be the last technique that I can present at this point, is to take responsibility. A lot of people, when they share with us any resentment, they're gonna say their version. Okay, this happened and this is what I know, and he or she did this bad thing, and actually I should accuse this person. But in reality, when we hear a version of any story from somebody, we should not just depend or rely on that story to understand what really went wrong. So if we really understand, if we really understand that we really want to take responsibility from our side too, who can say that we were actually really, really perfect, we were really correct, that we were not the people who actually provoked the other person to do the bad thing, or we were not behind anything to which that person came up with a resentment. I don't think that is bad to think about, because the both parties, probably the event, probably the person, and myself or yourself, could be a part of the problem. So it's good to take responsibility, say that I did this thing, and this thing happened from my side. So taking responsibility can also alleviate, help us to get rid of any resentment. So think about all these strategies. In the first place, I told you upana is resentment or enmity or grudge. It simply means clinging to an intention of causing harm to someone or to yourself, to a bunch of people, whoever, whatever. But the most important thing is that you probably express your upana or resentment in multiple ways. You probably do this harm physically, by physical ways, or probably by mentally, probably by emotionally, probably some people, in this discourse, what we also understand, people who are going to bully other people also have this mentality to some extent. So anyway, any type of intention to cause harm is called ill will. So, but resentment means clinging to that mentality. That's actually way actually bad actually. So you've got to be very careful. So I was telling you to use RAIN methodology to get rid of resentment in the first place. Recognize it, accept it, investigate it, and non-identify it. At the same time, you need to consider a few other techniques from the Buddhist practice, like don't justify any reasons to be resentful. Don't try to have a miscommunication, like a poor communication. Always have a good communication, so that everybody knows that we all are on the same page, right? Sometimes we talk about things to other people, but they are on a different page, right? So we need to get them. We need to have everybody on the same page. So for whatever, any personal, non-personal, social thing, right? That's a good way of not coming up with a resentment, right? And also, after something happened, for somebody to be resentful, one needs to take responsibility. They both need to take responsibility. That's also really helpful to get rid of this, bad mental, type of bad stage of our mind or body, which is called upana. So upanaha has to be, eliminated, or try to. You need to reduce. You need to really let go of this upanaha. Otherwise, it will take over you over time. So, in short, I would say, if you don't take care of, anger in the first place, it will become a resentment. That means from dosa to upanaha. I think Christine is asking, I couldn't hear what the N in RAIN stands for. Okay, I would actually repeat. So usually this methodology called RAIN, R is to recognize, okay, and A is to accept, I is to investigate, and N is to non-identify. So if we relate this to resentment, what you need to do is that you need to recognize when you have resentment, that I understand, that I recognize that there is resentment in me when you have it, and then you need to accept that this is what exists in me at this time, right? After you recognize, and then you need to investigate the source, object of resentment by many ways, like physically, mentally, emotionally, cognitively, probably in many other ways. And at the end, you need to separate you from the resentment. That is called non-identification. So that is RAIN methodology. Okay, so have a good night. Thank you.